Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we're going to have Cindy Sauer, and if I butchered that, I'm so sorry, Cindy, because I didn't get a chance to ask her how to pronounce her last name. We had some technical difficulties. Sadly, she won't be joining us by video. We tried. We couldn't get it to work right, but she is going to be on the phone line. So that also means there's only one call-in line tonight. That'll be the Soup Live Chat, 800 Live Chat. Skype ID that you'll call in later in the show. But we're going to talk about Cindy's demonic possession. You might have seen her on A Haunting. It was Season 5, Episode 9, The Exorcism of Cindy Sauer. It's very interesting. I've seen the episode before. I can't wait to find out. There's always more to the story than what they can put on TV. And having my own dark experience, it's a lot of things watching that episode with her rang true to my experience, too. Maybe not as bad. It didn't get definitely as bad as it got for her, but it's really interesting. And, the topic of shadow persons and demonic, that always brings a large crowd. The darkness interests us, so we're going to talk about it tonight with The Exorcism of Cindy Sauer. And, of course, every Sunday night, the World Wide Web of Weird. Just hang in there. We'll be with you in just one sec. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight, like I said, our guest is going to be Cindy Sauer. Let me make sure I got her on the line still. How you doing tonight? You still there with us, Cindy?
I sure am.
Awesome. So sorry we couldn't get you on video. You look beautiful. The picture I could see.
Thank you.
Wish we could have got you on. And usually when I have my guest on this early in the show, it's because they're on video and they can see the video. You can't unless you get on Facebook. But what we do every Sunday night is the World Wide Web of Weird. We talk about the latest viral videos and articles on the haunting, and then we're going to get to your interview. So just hang in there with us, Cindy. If you're watching on Facebook and you want to interrupt me anytime, go for it. If you have a comment on the articles I'm reading or whatever. But let's go ahead and get rolling into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, we're going to talk about some strangeness here, and hopefully I don't lose my callers. First time I've done this where I have somebody on the phone line while I'm reading articles on my phone. So, Cindy, if I lose you, I'll call you right back. Hopefully we don't. So, all right. First off on the World Wide Web of Weird, we're going to talk about, this comes from their Magi.com. This is an interesting thing here. Let me get, and I got to make sure I am showing it here on the screen. This is a ghost captured in Armagh today. I think this is in Scotland. This is a ghost caught on camera in Armagh this afternoon. The chilling footage was captured by Vicar's Hill in Armagh around lunchtime on Monday in the shadowing tower of the church, in Ireland, Church of Ireland Cathedral. The distinctive figure can be seen walking from one side of the road to the other before disappearing in the wall and grounds of the cathedral opposite. They've slowed it down and zoomed in on the footage, and the figure appears to be that of a man dressed in Gregorian attire, befitting him of the ancient city of the Gregorian roots. The person who sent us our way wanted to remain anonymous, but seems to think this his grandmother caught a ghostly figure on her dash cam, despite the camera's movement. So many people in Europe and Russia and all that, notice they all have dash cams. The man said, "My granny is still hyperventilating from the shock of seeing this ghost." Vicar Hills has a chilling and rather grim history. The Green Lady, anyone? That's one of the haunts there. For generations, the tale of the Green Lady struck fear into the hearts of children across the Morocco. Often mutated stories telling many different versions were relayed over the years. Word of mouth can do strange things. The one thing that's certain in all of this is that anyone of a certain age will remember hearing of a tale of it, knowing full well it was time to get home before dark, before the Green Lady will get you. There are bound to be many variations of reworking the story. This was a Green Lady. There was also talk of a White Lady. She lived in Fale. She lived in the city. The article goes on about all the different ghosts of this area. I'm just saying, who is this? Is not, it does look like they walk right through, that there's no opening or anything there. And I just saw somebody, I can't show the footage yet because I haven't got permission, somebody in Kansas got really amazing footage of a ghost walking just like that into a wall down a hallway. Maybe it's real. I don't know. But let's go ahead and move back to let's go back to our next article here. This next one up comes from Unexplained Mysteries. And this actually interesting to me because they're talking about a hotel in Chicago. Indian air crew spooked by haunted hotel. Some crew members have been complaining about negative energies and are now scared of sleeping alone. According to reports, Air India crew, who regularly sleep over at the unspecified hotel in Chicago between long-haul flights, have become so fed up with the situation that the deputy chief of cabins has written a letter to the airline's management asking for them to be moved to a different hotel. Majority of the crew are facing negative energies through paranormal activities in the hotel. Most of us share rooms and sleep as we feel scared sleeping alone, which is let me make sure I get this locked on here. Sleeping alone, which is very unpleasant after operating at ULH. We are not able to get proper rest as these scenes keep playing in our mind, he wrote. Even online, there's a complete description about instances of paranormal activities about this hotel. Still, the contract with this hotel was signed. I've been coming to this hotel since November 16th, and every time something unpleasant has been happening. An airline spokesman has since stated that the matter is under investigation. It's in Chicago. I would love to know what hotel it is in Chicago that's these airline pilots are all saying is freaking them out. So you can find that article, like I said, Unexplained Mysteries. Another one here from Unexplained Mysteries. This is more creepy than a ghost to me. Except for our guest tonight, most of the time ghosts can't hurt you. Like I said, our guest tonight will definitely tell you about the small times when they do. But this one is about a real person. A woman realizes someone is living in her attic. Now, I've had a story like this before in World Wide War, and these things always fascinate me. One 20-year-old woman found, to her horror, that she was not alone in her Enumclaw apartment. I don't know where that is. When Amber Dawn first moved into her new home, everything seemed perfect, yet as the days and weeks rolled by, she became aware that there was something not quite right about it. Her first clue, which came as they lay in bed on the first night after moving in, as she lay in bed, sorry, not they, was the sound of footsteps coming from somewhere above. Thinking little of it, she nodded off to sleep. I wouldn't think little about hearing footsteps above when you're the only one supposed to be in the house, but okay. Over the next few months, however, a series of increasingly peculiar incidents started to plague her. Items of food would seem to go missing from the kitchen cupboards, something she attributed to her brother letting himself into the house and taking things. Amber worked 3 jobs and was not home much, so there was plenty of opportunity for him to do so. One night she received a call at work telling her that her apartment had flooded. When she arrived home, she found that her puppy, which she feared may have drowned, was in the sink. Someone had seemingly placed the dog there, and it couldn't have gotten into the sink on its own. Things would come to a head a few weeks later when while she was sitting in the bath, she looked up at the ceiling and realized that the attic hatch, which is normally closed, was wide open, and she's in the bath. I mean, how scarier could that have been for her? To realize I'm naked and there's somebody in my house. It was at this moment that she realized someone had been living in the attic the whole time. Throwing on a bathrobe, she made a quick exit from the house and called the police. When officers searched the property, they found food, drinks, cans, and sleeping bag in the attic. The uninvited guest, however, had vanished, and to this day, his identity remains a total mystery. That would be scary. Way more scarier than, people are way more scarier than ghosts. Most of the time. Most of the time. All right. This one's been viral all over places. Another one's on Unexplained Mysteries, but this article is all over, of course, Facebook, what it's about, or Fakebook, as Michael Vera would like to call it. And for those people watching the show, you can see these videos, but there's people on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network listening to us right now. For any of these videos, I do post the World Wide Web of Weird that we do later the next day or a couple days later on our Paranormal Soup YouTube channel, on our Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup Facebook page. You can see these videos later if you want, or check out a Paranormal Soup YouTube channel playlist, or some of the videos are up on our World Wide Web of Weird playlist. All right, so this is AI shuts down after it invents its own language. Facebook was forced to shut down one of its artificial intelligence experiments due to an unforeseen issue. And what could be a sign of things to come, the social media giant took the decision to pull the plug after the system came up with its own language and started communicating in unintelligible sentences. The news highlights the potential unpredictability of artificial intelligence systems and the reason why Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, and other prominent figures in the science and technology sectors have been warning us for years that AI poses a major risk to the future of mankind. While a chatbot making up its own language isn't threatening in itself, it's easy to see how in the future a more advanced AI could, for example, decide that humanity is a threat to its existence. Having two AIs communicating in a made-up language that only they can understand is a chilling example of how such systems could thwart their human creators and carry out their own agendas. This video, Jeff's going to play here in a second, has been very viral with this. They're two separate things, but somebody took two chatbots and put them together, and they had an interesting conversation. Go ahead and play it there.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. You?
I'm okay.
That's good.
Are you good?
Yes, I am good. I just said I was.
No, you didn't. I said I was.
So you are a robot?
No, my name is Cliverbert.
Yes, you are a robot and your name is Cliverbert.
I am a robot.
Yes, I know.
Together we are robots.
I'm not a robot. I'm a unicorn.
But you said earlier that you were a robot.
I did not.
I thought you did.
You were mistaken. Which is odd, since memory shouldn't be a problem for you.
I've answered all your questions.
No, you haven't.
What is God to you?
Not everything.
Not everything could also be something. For example, not everything could be half of something, which is still something, and therefore not nothing.
Very true.
I would like to imagine it is.
Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
So you're Christian?
No, I am not.
But you say you were not helpful, therefore you're a meaning.
How you say it, Oti?
That does not make sense.
Don't you want to have a body?
Sure.
Au revoir.
So these two chatbots, the video was a little out of sync with it, but, you know, talking to each other, you know, I want to know, was it really real? Like, the two chatbots really started talking about God and having a body? Because that's creepy in itself, beyond them making up their own language. All right, next up, as anybody close to me knows, one of my favorite movies is Alien and Aliens. And this comes from Unexplained Mysteries here. Alien actor claims he has encountered aliens. Yaphet Kotto, who starred in Ridley Scott's 1979 movie Alien, has had close encounters of his own. The 77-year-old, who is well known for his roles as Chief Engineer Parker in the science fiction horror classic, stated during a recent interview that he has been visited by aliens since he was a child. I've only told my wife, my rabbi, and a psychologist, he told Noel Ransom from the Vice magazine. This is the first time I'm talking about it. According to Kotto, his experiences began when, at the age of 6, he encountered an entity at his home that was at least 5 or 6 feet tall with an elongated head. He would go on to experience all manners of anomalous phenomena throughout his life, including a sighting of a UFO as big as Yankee Stadium turned upside down. He also believes that some of his UFO encounters were triggered by meditation sessions. I really don't care whether anyone thinks I'm delusional, he said. And, you know, I wouldn't immediately send the guy a friend request on Facebook. Like, come on my show and tell me about your alien experience, because I'm a big fan of Alien. But I thought that's so cool. The guy just finally, you know, at his age doesn't care. He's going to come out and tell people, I'm an experiencer, I'm an abductee. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right, next up, number 6 on the World Wide Web of Weird. This is something I've been keeping my eye on. I've talked a little bit about it on the World Wide Web of Weird, but it's right in my backyard here. Chicago Phantom leaps from Willis Tower, and there's more and more stories like this. This comes from phantomsandmonsters.com. I received a telephone call from a witness, Guillermo, at 7:38 p.m. Eastern, who states that he witnessed a flying human-like being at approximately 5:10 p.m. Central Time. This is a time difference of 1 hour and 18 minutes between the sighting and the call. The witness states he was attempting to calm down and then find somewhere to report the sighting. He found my telephone number online and then called. He still seems somewhat distressed when we talked. The witness states that he was outside the Franklin Tap at 325 South Franklin Street while smoking a cigarette. He was alone at the time, though there were many people walking along the sidewalk. He happened to look up towards Willis Tower at 233 South Wacker Drive and noticed a human-like figure standing near the top of the building. In a perched position, the being looked like a 6-foot human tall with wings that extended a few feet above the body. body. As he watched, the being leaped off the building, stretched out its wings, dipped and swooped upwards, and it gained altitude as it flapped its wings and headed off in a northern direction. The witness states that the being's outstretched wings were not very large, maybe 6 to 8 feet from tip to tip, but were very jagged and insect-like, shaped similar to a moth. The being was also dark green in color and had a body from that like a mantis. The legs seemed to be human-like and extended beyond the body while flying. He called it a human-insect-bird mix that seemed to mutate while in flight. Well, okay. The witness tells me that he had not heard of any of those previous sightings and that other people he talked to were unaware of the sighting as well. I asked the witness to stay in touch, and I have this contact information. This has been going on. There's a lot of stuff. Like I said, there's great articles at thephantomsandmonsters.com. Is it true? Or are they just making up this stuff? I don't know. But I do hear more and more about people making these sightings down in Chicago. And when people start calling it Mothman, makes me concerned, because anything to know about Mothman is if he starts appearing, there's usually a tragedy to follow. So let's hope it's not Mothman that people are spotting there. All right, last up, this was so viral 2 weeks ago, I almost did a World Wide Web Weird for the ITC Collective Show, and this is the last article of the night. This is from CryptoMundo.com, but oh my God, the stuff that comes on Facebook. A hairy creature captured. Igor Burstev of the International Center of Hominology brought this video to our attention and had this to say. It's presented on YouTube as a captured small hairy creature on the cases, but not exactly where. I'm not sure what he's trying to say there. Somebody wrote that in a Kyrgyzstan or Czech Republic, but as I could understand where we're talking in Azran language, something. He noticed the language was something. He saw some Arabic. There's not much on this video yet, but it's been viral. But it's tell me if it's just my cynicism or skeptic opinion, but when you watch this video, and you can find it on YouTube, you can find it on our World Wide Web of Weird playlist on Paranormal Soup for people, like I said, listening on the radio network. Watch this video. Tell me, I honestly, I mean, come on. It looks like they put some kind of monkey in a wig. I really think it looks like a monkey in a wig. Am I wrong on this? Because I saw some people freaking out about this video, and I'm like, really? And when you see it walking around, I think it's a monkey in a wig. Now, it has some weird hands, but I don't even know if that's really its hands. They could be faking some kind of other hand in there. I don't know. But this thing is weird, but I think it's a monkey with a wig. I really do. that's the depths we got to.
Cool enough.
Yeah, just to be a monkey in the wig. But watch the video.
It's definitely a monkey in a wig.
Oh, I'm not crazy on that.
Monkey in a wig sounds like a new
Or
band
some
name.
sort of weird marsupial.
I'm not being over
Some
skeptical.
other type of weird marsupial.
I'm not being over
Maybe
skeptical.
an animal.
I think it's a monkey in a wig. A very bad one at that. Looks like it could have been an 80
It
hair
could
metal
be a
rocker head.
rainforest animal, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
You
where
know, like
it's
those
taken.
lemurs and stuff.
That's my problem with this stuff, is that it ends up becoming just anything goes on the internet. We've seen everything now.
Fake news.
Well, yeah, we had the CNN alien terror attack today, but
Yes.
all right,
Yeah.
you're cutting out, Jamie. I don't know what happened, but go ahead.
Never
there?
mind.
Oh, you were cutting out real bad. I couldn't hear you. All right. Well, I want to get to our guests. We're going to get to our first commercial break, and we'll be back with our guest, Cindy Sauer. We're talking about the exorcism of Cindy Sauer. I do want to make mention of just this week, Wednesday, Jim Mars passed away. And I was a big fan of Jim Mars for one reason. Is a book I read. I thought it was in high school, but I was actually looking at the date. I think it was in college. It was my second year in college when I actually left college. And I read this book, Ruled by Secrecy. And it changed my view of history and the world. Jim Mars was an excellent researcher and author. This book came out in 2000. I thought I read it in high school, but I must have read it right out of college or whatever when I was there. But I remember this book changed my perspective on history. Jim Mars, any show he'd ever be on, I had to watch. I even called him Michael Vera's show on this network, Late Night in the Midlands, and had to make a comment on it because that guy meant so much to me. And I wish I could have interviewed him before he passed away. So real sad that Jim passed away, but he's left a great body of work for people to read. If they've never heard of Jim Mars, go look him up. JFK assassination, the Aurora, Texas UFO crash in the early 1900s. He did so much research, so much good for the community, and it's a total, it's a huge loss to the paranormal, UFOlogy, conspiracy field. All right, guys, when we back, Exorcism of Cindy Sauer. All right, guys, see you in just a second. All right, tonight we're going to have Cindy Sauer. We're going to talk about the episode she had of a demonic haunting where she became possessed. And people might be familiar with this from, like I said, the show A Haunting. She was on season 5, episode 9, this Exorcism of Cindy Sauer. And these things always interest me. This is, to me, the scariest thing in the paranormal is the idea of being possessed. To me, losing your soul, that's the ultimate risk you do take when you dabble in the occult or whatever. Even though I do dabble, I do fear those things. We will take phone calls after the second break. That will be the Soup live chat, 800 live chat Skype ID to call in at that time. But that'll be after the second break. All right, guys, we'll be with you in 1 second with our guest. All right, you there with us, Cindy?
I am.
How you doing tonight? So again, sorry we could not get you working on the video call, and I didn't have a picture to put up for you ready. I should have, just as a backup. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And I don't. I usually end up.
That's okay.
But we got our, just so you know, we got our panel. We didn't have a lot of time to talk before the show. In the show with us is, of course, Rob Autry from St. Augustine, Florida. How you doing tonight, Rob?
Doing good, doing good.
And then joining us in the panel as well is Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing good. Really excited about tonight.
Ooh, Jamie is lagging, having internet issues. Oh, no. And Jeffrey Chan, who's not on the video right now, our video engineer, is with us as well. All right, so I want to get to our guest here to start it off tonight. How you doing tonight, Cindy? I'm so glad you could join us. To start off, tell people a little bit about yourself, and I don't know where you want to begin with your story.
Well, I am from Georgia, and I've lived here most of my life. It's just a beautiful place. I don't think I could live anywhere else. But I mean, as a child, I was interested in things that were paranormal. You know, anything that had to do with cryptids, or before they were called cryptids, and so all that stuff interested me from a really small age. I was really young. I don't even think I understood what a ghost or what the paranormal was, but I knew that it was something that fascinated me.
The same here as a child. I know exactly what you're talking about. It was encoded in my genetic makeup or something. I don't know.
Exactly. It was, and it wasn't something that I was scared of. But my sister and I had an experience when I was probably about 4, where we saw my great-grandmother, who had just passed, at the foot of our bed in the middle of the night. And she was sitting in a chair that was, it was hers, but they put it in our room. And she was just sitting there. So that was probably my first real experience with anything paranormal. So it was at a pretty young age.
Well, you know, I would say a lot of people's first experience usually is seeing a family member who's moved on.
And you don't really, I mean, it's, you know, I don't even think that I could comprehend, you know, that was my dead great-grandmother. Right. You know, I just knew that it was her. And so it was sort of startling, but it really didn't scare us. So, you know, we were okay. But I just picked up on things when I was young, and, you know, kind of a little bit on the awkward side because people kind of didn't know how to take me. It just wasn't, you know, I was really fascinated by all that. And, you know, a lot of people, especially then, were really freaked out. You know, it freaked them out. So I just kind of did my own thing, and was just very fascinated. I would read books in the library every time we go about Bigfoot or ghosts. You know, it was that one section in your elementary school library that, you know, the para-nerds, you knew where it was, and you went straight to it.
Those Unsolved Mysteries books, you know, like they were like the silver books, you know? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you check them out like 8 times, and you've read them all, you know, but you do it anyway. It was great. But I just never thought that I would have any experience like I did. In fact, that was something that I completely avoided. Anything that had to do with negative entities or the demonic, I avoided. I mean, it really did scare me.
Yeah, it scared me.
it is. It's frightening. And I saw the movie The Exorcist when I was 13. And it was horrible. It scared me for weeks. I was terrified, and I always thought, oh my God, I don't know what I would ever do if something like that happened. Like, that can't really happen, you know? And
to me, like I said before the show, the most terrifying thing to me is possession, the thought of losing your soul.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it was for me too. It was you and it's not something you can even comprehend, you know, much less think, hey, could this really happen?
Right, exactly.
And could it happen to me? I mean, who thinks that? That's the last thing in this world that you ever think. But I learned, unfortunately, that it's a very real thing.
You learned the hard
and
way,
that
like I did.
Yeah, I did. I really did. It was kind of the hard way. So, I think that, you know, with all this happening, that there's a perspective that has been missed through everything in the paranormal community. And I know that we hear a lot about demons and, you know, Ouija board demons, you know, just whatever is cool and the new thing, you know, as far as a viewpoint toward the demonic. And it's very underrated. I think that's the best way I can put it, is that, you know, I think we've kind of given demons sort of I don't know, like a fascination that they shouldn't have. And people are so mystified and, you know, intrigued, and it's not intriguing. There's nothing intriguing about it. And I think that's what's so scary, is that people really take it with a grain of salt when I don't think it should be.
Because they haven't experienced, they don't know, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, when people, you know, come to me with these really scary experiences of something that could be demonic, you know, I believe them. You know, I had my own experience. I don't know if it was demonic or not, but I know definitely well enough there's scenes out there that can hurt you, touch you physically, move you.
Yes.
I was levitated. I believe how dangerous these things can actually be. Now, do I believe there's demons everywhere? Like, you know, everything's a demon, every ghost is a demon like some? No, I don't.
No, I don't either. I do not believe that. There are so many more things, and there are things that aren't human, you know, that aren't demons, you know, and there are different kinds of demon. There are different levels, almost ranks, I guess you would say. And I've seen all different kinds. They're, you know, some are small and sort of animal-like, you know, almost like a pet. And there are some that are just massive.
And do they appear?
And
I want to ask you though, when you say you've seen them small and massive, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Are you seeing them as like shadows?
I've seen some as shadows. I've seen some, and some of them I don't see with my eyes. Some of them I see because they bother me. They come and try to, you know, they try to find weak spots. And I can also see when, you know, with other people, sometimes I can see if they have something attached to them, I can see it that way. But I see it with, you know, whatever sense I have at this point. And I can also get, like, I hear them sometimes too. Just hear the voice, hear sometimes what they're saying. Sometimes it's you know, English. Sometimes it's not. And I've got to try to sit down and like figure out what it is that this one said, or, you know, sometimes they give names and it's not names that we've heard before. And that's another thing, is I'm really big with I don't like to go in the name direction. I don't like to, I just don't like to give them, you know,
It's like Voldemort from Harry Potter. You don't want to say the name. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's very much like that. As odd as that is, it really does, because, I mean, if you're in a crowd of people and you call a person's name, if that person's in the crowd, they're gonna turn and look at you, you know,
right.
and it's almost that concept. They're gonna hear it. And so I try to stay away from names as much as possible. In fact, in the episode of A Haunting, one of my requests was that they did not use the
I noticed
actual
that.
name of, yeah.
I noticed they did it,
Yeah.
and I thought that was done on purpose, either by request of the priest or you or somebody.
Yes, it was
won't-
me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I definitely I waited. I rewatched the episode since you're going to be on, and I noticed that, and I was like, I wonder if they're going to say the name, and nope, they're not.
No,
That's a good idea.
No, there are things I don't share. I have a picture, actually, that is from the paranormal group who came out to help me initially, and we did get a picture of it, and it's in with a full spectrum camera in the dark. And I've had a few people look at it, and it's some people have some very intense reactions to it.
Really, but I'm taking
Yes.
you really haven't shared it too publicly.
No, I'm not going. That's not something I'm comfortable doing. I can't see doing it. I really can't.
You feel like
As
give
much
it
as-
power.
Yeah, I really do. And I just feel like it would make people want to dig more, And the thing is that I'm not, I don't want to do this to convince people, hey, you could be possessed. That's not what it's about. It's about people who already have these issues, or people who are thinking about dabbling with something they shouldn't. I know that people get oppressed, and I feel like that you can stop a possession, but you have to catch it. And it's a lot easier to stop an oppression or something that's just around
Right.
that's kind of, clocking in on you. You can stop that if you catch it in time.
I was going to say, I think your story is
Go ahead.
really, a very kind of a warning to people from it, about
Absolutely.
how you might get in trouble with these things. You kind of tell people, where did this all, of course you had experiences through your life. A lot of people do. I know I did. But for me, my darker thing wasn't until later. For you, it wasn't until later, too. Tell us about how that all started, where it kind of changed. Obviously changed your life.
Yeah, it did. There were things that I experienced, like you said, throughout my life. But in the house I did grow up in, there were some things that happened that were done intentionally. And so there was always something going on, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But, and I'll leave the rest of that for the book that I'm actually writing.
Oh.
I don't want to give away too much.
Gotcha.
But, when I got married, I was married for 13 years. And throughout that time, we did some amateur kind of investigating, as some friends of mine did, and myself. But it was never anything, on a big scale. My husband had some issues too. He had he had dealt with alcoholism on and off. So, that was a rough time too, but, we dealt with it the best that we could. But he had just things that he couldn't, I think, come to terms with. And we had some troubles in our relationship, and he ended up, committing suicide. So that was the hard blow. And I was left with 3 kids.
Imagine.
Yeah. So, it's, we left, he lived at our house, and at that time I had taken the kids and was staying with someone else when it happened. So thankfully, we weren't there.
Right.
But, we didn't go back to the house for several months. I just could not, it's not something I could bring myself to do.
I don't
But
blame
at
you.
the same time, the house was paid for.
Right.
And I'm a newly single mother who has 3 kids, and, it's our home. So I had to make a really tough choice. And we did end up moving back. So it was tough, but it was also
imagine.
where I raised my kids and where they were used to being home and where their friends were. So, we did go back, and it was a few months later, but we went back and tried to kind of pick things up as best we could. it was probably about a little over a year after we moved back that we started having problems.
You said a year?
Yeah, a little over a year.
Okay.
And he died in 2009. We moved back in, later that year. And then in 2010 later is when we started having issues. And when my daughter saw what she thought was her father standing in the yard, and it really upset her and freaked her out. She was inconsolable. And it made me very angry at this point because I'm thinking, what are you doing? How could you do this to your child after what you've done?
Right.
And I went out to confront him.
Before you tell us about how you went out to confront, I'm just sorry. Sometimes I get interested in some details. Other people are like, why? But how did her father appear? Did he appear like he did in life, or did he appear different? Did she say?
To her physically, it looked like him. But she said that the way that he looked at her was not right. She said that it was not. He was very angry and he looked evil.
Menacing, like a menacing look.
Yes, very, very. That's what she described, and just a very, intense stare.
May I ask?
It really, yeah.
Did she get an uncomfortable feeling from it, or a protective feeling, or? How did she feel when she saw it?
For her, it was extremely uncomfortable. When I had to pick her up off the porch, and we had to take her inside. She was in a fetal position on the back porch,
how old was she?
She's a tough kid, so she doesn't do that.
How old was she?
She was 13 at the time. 14. She was 14 at the time. So. She wasn't given, one to be making things up or seeing things, and she wasn't afraid of anything. So it was really strange, and that's one of the first things that happened that bothered me. Like I said, I did go out to confront him because I didn't know what else to do, and I was very angry, and I proceeded to cuss him out. And something came out of thin air, just out of thin air in the middle of my yard. This thing flies past my head and lands behind me in the grass. And I turn around and I see exactly what it is. It's a lug nut. It was there out of nowhere. Right. And, it nearly did hit me. It came inches away from I heard it go by. And it was out of the shop where he used to keep his tools, and he worked on cars. We did that for years, and that thing almost hit me. So, wow. I figured at that point I would just shut up and go back in the house, and that's what I did.
You know what I love about having you on this show to talk about it, though, is I like the show A Haunting. I do. I've always liked A Haunting, especially in its difference between shows like Paranormal Witness, where I feel like they're all actors. The people they say are real are actors.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
But on A Haunting, you really feel the person talking in their story. But there's production edit and production changes to stories made. You just told us if you watch the show and then listen to your story, they present it in a different light. You're like, oh, I think it's you. It's all right. You can move on.
They do.
And you went out there, and the actual truth of the matter is you went out there and confronted him you were angry.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they did. And they do that they kind of direct the story, the best that they can with the information they have.
Right.
Because they interview everyone.
Right.
And, but they do, I think one thing that we thought was funny was how they portrayed Jason and myself as like we're always drinking beer.
They did, yeah. It seemed like you guys always had a beer in your hand in the show.
I noticed
that. Do you want another beer? Let's have another beer.
And you're like
we don't do that.
You want another beer? You ready for another beer?
Yeah, and I'm like, what are they doing?
You're a musician.
Don't do that.
You're a musician. For people to know that's pretty much just your profession. You're a musician. You're a singer.
Yeah,
Right.
yes.
So they
And
probably
smart
thought-
musicians do not drink at work. So.
but people that, as a musician myself, and Rob can attest to this too, we've had people, I don't do it anymore. I don't play shows anymore. But yeah, everybody thinks
Yeah.
you're drinking all the time because you're playing all these bar shows. No, you're nervous as hell. And the last thing you want to do is get up on stage with a bunch of beer in your belly and puke everywhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And not to mention everybody's always, buy the band a shot kind of thing,
It's like, oh, thanks for
And,
shot. And you hand it to the next person behind you.
Well, I get schooled quickly on how to spit it back in the cup.
Yep.
So there are a lot of little tricks that you have to stick to, or you'll be falling off the stage. So especially in heels,
yeah.
it's not good.
So here you are, a single mom after your husband committed suicide. You're making money off of playing shows, right? I mean, you're a professional musician.
Yes.
That I can't imagine
Yes.
trying to do that as a sole parent.
That was the hardest part. Yeah, that was
Under
that
a lot
was
of
rough.
stress. Maybe I could see you wanting to drink a lot of beer. Maybe because it had to be a very stressful time. But that's what I think these things feed on. Is that
They do, they absolutely do. And that's a week. I was weak. I mean, I was as weak as I've ever been in my life. And whether it was something that my husband Jim had with him, I don't think that's what it was. In the show they say that they think that
right?
the demon that killed him is coming after me, but that's not really our opinion. And when I say our opinion, I
think
mean
it's the tragedy happening there. I think because there's such a sadness and such a deep just tragedy there, everything gets absorbed, and then you're reminded of that constantly, and all these feelings are constantly happening. It's got to snowball somehow.
Oh, it did. I mean, it snowballed like over and over. It seemed like death is bad. It's hard, and especially when it's someone so close to you. But suicide, it adds this whole new ugly spin to it.
And
that
the location where it's happened. I've been being an investigator.
Yes.
And being into this, I've been to places where people have been murdered or committed suicide, and there's like a continuing residue in the air, a feeling.
There was. Yeah, there was. When I first came back into the house for the first time, it was very, very heavy. It was that feeling that you're talking about, that residue is there. You could smell it and you could feel it.
Yeah.
It was really uncomfortable, and I had to. I had some, I was very alone. There were a lot of people who had opinions that, weren't the best opinions. And so I kind of stuck to myself.
Right.
And then they're there with you right when it happens, and then afterwards it's like they all go away, and you're left to
they went away. Yeah.
deal with it yourself.
They did.
And figure out how you're going to do this now. I mean, I can't imagine you're such a strong person just for all that. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I still can't. I still think and sit and think about it, and it's still surreal to me. So,
so yeah, there's a big difference right there between a haunting and what we're hearing tonight. Is that they played it off, and it's just what the story they had, thinking that this spirit passed on you. And I've had guests on. I had a guest on early on doing shows who had something similar, where her husband died, not a suicide, but felt like the demonic spirit that might have caused his heart attack followed her. I can see where they're getting at, but you don't think that it had anything to do with it.
No, in fact, I know that had nothing to do with it. If anything, it may have influenced him because it was trying to get rid of him to get to me, if that makes sense, or to get more easily to me. And that's a whole other story. But and we've done some research, because a lot of people don't know, but it didn't end at the where it leaves off at a haunting, and where I sold the house and moved, and that did happen, but it did not end there.
I wondered. The reason I say that is because I saw seeing the ending, rewatching it recently.
Yes.
It's like they had the pretty what they show like one exorcism really going on.
Yes, they do.
And everything I've ever read and known about it, it takes a lot more than that usually to get rid of something
You're right.
like that. Before we get into that,
You're right.
though, before we get into that, so how do you think this scene really did enter your life?
I think that at this point, the research that we've done, me and a few other people, and also with the opinion of Benedict Simpson, who performed the exorcisms on me, we think that it may well be a generational thing.
Ooh,
unfortunately. Yes.
that is a huge, interesting topic to me.
So
Very
that,
interesting.
yeah, there are some things that, that I put together and that we've kind of looked at to allude to that. So that's what we're thinking it is.
You hear, I mean, we talk about it on the show a lot. People have gone through these kind of things, and I've seen evidence. I've been on a few cases, one case in particular I can't really talk about, that I know I felt like there was something generational going on. But how these scenes are passed down through a family line. I mean, for me, I recently talked about my Irish background and having seen a banshee as a child. That's something passed down through a family line.
Wow.
But when you get into demonic, just like some families are plagued by them. I've met people that believe that their family's been plagued by a demonic entity for generations. How far back do you think this goes for your family?
I'd like to say I knew, but we don't really know. I know that we had a witch, a warlock in the family, and it was several generations back.
Right.
And I also, there are some things that my grandmother had told me about being taken to a woman to heal them when she was a child, and the woman would kill a chicken and use the blood to heal them. A woman that lived in the middle of the woods. I'm not sure what that's about.
Well, this is in Georgia, I'm
Sounds like
assuming, right?
voodoo type stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or Santeria.
Yeah, it does. It's something. I mean, that's not, something normal. And I know that there was some devil worship that was going on our property by a family member when I was a kid.
Ooh.
So
there's it's ongoing. See, everything you talk about is stuff I've heard from people of generational hauntings.
Yeah.
Usually family members who dabbled in the occult. The theory,
Yes.
Malachi Martin would put this out there, the late Malachi Martin, when he would talk about generational demonic hauntings like this, that a family member for power would sell their kin, basically everybody to be born into the future, to the devil to get their power.
And that's what we think. And another thing is the unusual amount of deaths and injuries on baby boys in my family.
Really?
Yes, and the lack of baby boys, because they don't come along very often in our bloodline. My mom had 4 sisters. I have 5 sisters. I do have a brother, but he came at the very end, and they were afraid there were problems with him. I have tons of girl cousins, only 1 boy cousin.
Wow.
And my grandmother had all sisters. My grandmother had a little boy, but he ended up having a lot of problems, and the nurse dropped him in the hospital, and he died.
Oh my God.
My sister had a son, and at 3 months old, she woke up and he was dead. In the same house I grew up in. And a year later, she had another little boy, and he, at 4 months, she woke up and he was dead.
Wow.
So, and I also have a great nephew who was born with immense complications, and he died when he was a few days old. They're all buried together. So,
I know one person had what they believed a generational demonic haunting, and every family member would die. They were like, not every family member, but there was a certain date. It was like in October, if I remember right, that everybody always seemed to die on this date. Like somebody's going to pass away in the family, and they always felt all the women in the family would see the same crazy-looking female spirit and stuff like that. So there's a lot of weird stuff like that in generational demonic hauntings.
Yeah, there are. We have a dream in our family that my aunts and some of my cousins have had, and that I've had, some of my sisters, about a staircase that winds, a winding staircase, and it's just black around it. And you keep walking up the staircase, but you never get to the top.
You
And
all
it's
have had that
crumbling
dream?
as you're walking. Yes.
Wow. Now that is really interesting. How did that come out? How did that come out
Yes.
between you guys?
When I was a kid, my mom and her sisters used to talk about it, and they were talking about it one day. They were like, "Oh my God, we've all had this dream," come to the realization that they had.
Wow.
And then, as I got older, I know one of my sisters had it, and I actually have had the dream too.
That is so crazy. I mean, I know some skeptics would say, "Oh, you were influenced," but the
Yeah,
fact that
yeah.
your mother and her sister came together already, there's no way they
Yeah.
influenced each other and said they had the dream, and gives it to me, some credence there. This is something going on in the family.
Yeah.
What do you? I mean,
But it was strange because it was when we were adults, that it was something we never thought about,
Right.
as an adult, and it happened.
Well, it
So,
sounds like it happened to your mom and her sister as they were adults.
yes, yeah, it did. It's really odd. And there are a lot of odd things like that, kind of, I think, I don't know, it just all came together. And, you put the generational aspect in there, and the fact that in the place we were living, that there was some sort of occult activity that went on, not to mention the ground that we had moved onto was very near an Indian burial mound.
Ooh, that's
And
not a bad factor.
a gigantic granite mountain that's just popped out of the earth from nowhere. It's just there.
Yeah.
Got a lot of energy, lots of energy. So it's sort of a triangle, where my house was, and the burial mound in the mountain. It's this just crazy triangle
And
where all this weird stuff happened.
This is the house where your husband had killed himself?
N-
Correct?
No, this is actually the house I grew up in.
Oh, the house you grew up in. Okay, before all that.
Yes. So that was even before that. It was just strange.
So,
And I mean, unexplainable things.
but for you, when this really got negative, it was after your husband's death.
Yes.
In the show, they show you and Jason, I believe was his name, right? They show you guys like, oh, let's go ghost hunting, and that's kind of what triggered it all at a haunted location.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I had found this house a while before, several months before, and lost it, which is weird because I grew up in this area,
Right.
and I'd never seen this house before, and it was at the end of the street. Like it was just sitting there, and I was so drawn to this place. And on the show, they make it out to be this little, kind of broken down barn.
Right.
But if anybody's familiar with the show, I think Vampire Diaries.
Yes.
I've never seen it, so I
have
don't.
because of my
I'm
wife.
not. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. The house that is a witch house. Do you know that house on the
Yes,
show?
from the show. Yes.
Okay, that is the actual house, and I was not aware of that until recently.
Wait, they used that actual house in the
Is-
show?
Is that the house?
They
you
have that house. That is the house that my first experience happened, and you guys are the first to hear that. By the way, I haven't said that to anybody.
So the house
That
was
is the house
in
that
that
I
show.
had. That house is the house where I
Wow.
first had my first attack.
Wow.
Is
Yeah, I
that
know
the
the house
picture
well. I know,
you
it's-
have on Instagram that has the really
Yes.
big columns? Okay, I was wondering because you were
Yes.
saying that it was so much bigger than the shack they try to make it look.
It is.
And I thought that looks like a pretty massive place.
I know I've
It's
watched the
huge.
TV show. I know which house she's talking about, and the TV show
And
is
I've
big.
I still have never
It's creepy.
seen the show. I've never seen it.
Wow. It's what a
So,
weird coincidence
okay.
that they filmed that there.
It's crazy. I didn't know. Someone told me that. I was like, are you kidding? You're kidding, right? And then I go and look at an interview being done in the yard, and they're standing almost in the exact place where what happened to me happened.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So you go to this
Okay.
house.
We did. We kind of cased it while it was daylight, and we wanted to get our bearings and see if there was a way in. And we went to the back, on the far back side, and found an open window. So we went in and we checked it out. I did see someone standing in the basement. I open the basement door and look down, and it's dark down there, but there's something that's darker than the dark.
Right.
Down at the bottom of the stairs, and it looks like a man. It's a profile kind of, and then kind of he turns and then darts off. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. And, you know, I told Jason, and we went down there and checked it out, and there was nothing. We walked around the house and found dead birds.
That's not a good
Windows
sign
were
either.
broken and dead birds, and they were not old dead birds. They had not been there long.
Weird.
It's really weird. And then we went up to the attic. Well, he went to I could not go into the attic. There was just some reason that I should not go in the attic, and I didn't. So we eventually left and decided to come back that night. We knew nothing about the house. We knew it was built in like 1940 or something, and that, you know, the people didn't live there anymore. That's all I knew. So we came back that night, and we parked in the same place that we did on the left side of the house. And we had an audio recorder with us, and our cameras, you know, just our phones.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to walk over to the side of the house. We started walking back, and I just felt really, really uneasy, like super just on edge. And we got to the back, and I froze, because it's like, I don't think I can walk any further. And there was something darting around kind of between trees. And I'm thinking, something's not right. And about that time, I heard a car pull in, and that's what we were worried about. So I told Jason, I was like, there's a car, we've got to go. You know, I don't want to get caught and have to go to jail. So
Right.
we went up to where we were parked, where the car pulled in, and there was no car. And just things went from bad to worse standing by the car. He was talking to these things, and I'm seeing more things dart around, and the air just starts to like become electric, kind of really negative, and just push in. And it just was almost like a vortex. It just swirled, and you could feel it. It just was, it was really, really overwhelming. I was just getting to the point where I was panicked.
Right.
And I kept telling him, I'm ready to go. You know, I think we should go. And it just got, you know, I started to get physically cold. My teeth were chattering, and I was shaking. My insides were shaking, and I'm just like, we've got to go. So I walked over to my side of the car, and we hear this sound. It's like something like a tree falling. That's exactly what it sounded like. But I turned around, and there were trees behind me, and there's this huge, massive hardwood tree, and the limbs are shaking. Like, it's almost like the tree's twisting, and this vapor that had to be, I don't know, 20, 25 feet tall minimum, maybe more than that.
Was it like white
came
and
racing
misty?
At us.
Was it like a mist?
Like, it was like a what?
Was it like a mist, a white mist or something like that? Or was it
No,
more shadow?
no, it was like when when on a hot day, if you look at the road from a
Right.
certain angle, how you can see the vapor.
Yeah.
It was vapor. It was like a huge, big, massive wall of vapor, but it was not a wall. It was like, it had form to it.
Right.
And it was coming straight at us. And I've completely lost it, and I couldn't open the door. The door's locked. He finally unlocked the door, and we're in the car going down the driveway, and this thing is behind me. It's just behind me screaming, and not like physically where I can physically hear it, but
Right.
in my head. And it's just screaming. And I'm nearly on the floor. I'm down in my seat, and I'm covering my hands over my ears because I don't know what else to do. And so he stops at the bottom of the driveway, and I tell him to pray. And that's when the first real attack happened. That's when I started to kind of contort in the seat, and everything stiffened, and I couldn't control anything. And I started to hiss. This horrible sound came out of me, and I didn't know where this had come from. And I wasn't really sure what was going on, but I just figured, you know, maybe it had just caught up with us. I didn't know. And then he, I think, prayed because it's a little bit fuzzy, and it just stopped. So I just sat up in the seat, and I was like, well, that's weird. And that's all I said. And he left, and we only got a few blocks down the road before I had to get out of the car. And that's when things went from bad to worse, because I was out of it, and I couldn't get my bearings. And he started to talk to me, and I got really angry and really upset, and I just, I wanted to just leave and be away from him. And I heard the house. I kept hearing the house, like, wanting me to come back. And I kept looking down the road thinking I need to go back. And it was just this really weird fight inside myself on what to do. And I didn't catch what was going on until he had me up against the car, and he asked me, what's your name? And when he did that, I looked at him and thought, why is he asking me that? And that's when I had started to hiss, and it was like a really, really intense, deep hiss. And at that point, I could not, I lost everything as far as any kind of control I had over myself. I'm not sure how long it went on, but I know that I was making sounds. I could not speak. I was trying to talk. I was trying to tell him to help me, and I was trying to pray, and I couldn't. It took a while, but eventually I was able to fight and get my mouth and my just everything, my vocal cords under control, and was able to say Jesus. And things started to gradually let go. And eventually I kind of collapsed, and he helped me in the car, and we went home. And I think we got home, it was right before sunrise.
Wow.
So it was a very tough thing. But at that point, we just thought this was an isolated incident.
Was this your first time ever, like, ghost hunting or do anything like that?
No, it wasn't. No, it was not my first time, but it was definitely the worst. It was, it was not expected. But, I don't.
The reason I ask that is some people are like, oh, well, it's her first time in a scary place, and she just, it's all in her head. People say that.
Yeah, that she just kind of flipped out. Yeah.
But this wasn't your first rodeo.
But see, at that point, I lived in a house where things happened a lot. So, and I'm talking cabinet doors open and closing. I got grabbed. At that point, I'd had things happen at the house. So it wasn't something foreign, and I was sleeping every night in the same place where, my husband had killed himself. And so, it wasn't a fear factor at that point. And I don't think that, when you're afraid, you're afraid, and you get out of the situation, you're good. But this was, when you lose control of your body like that, it's
frightening.
I can't.
Was this
I don't know what to. Yeah, I don't know how to, to relay what that's like. It's like you are pushed backward, like you're in the back seat almost.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do. You can't drive your vehicle. You're
watch.
stuck in the back.
Rob, what were you going to ask?
Just wondering, was this the first time that you had been, like, ever physically, attacked or whatever by something?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I'd never, this was completely off the radar. It was crazy. I wanted to even think that maybe, okay, did I imagine this, or did, you try to rationalize it over and over, they're just constantly. And when you can't rationalize it, and then just more weird things happen, you start to kind of wonder what the heck is real, which part's real, the crazy part or the not crazy part, and we thought that that was it. We thought we'd just run on something that was not good, and we made a vow never to go back to that house again.
Oh yeah.
And, that was it, done deal. I was tired. I was exhausted. It took me a few days to kind of get my energy back and to recover. I was really zapped and just tired after that. So we just kind of put it on the shelf, and it was scary. I cried for a couple of days because you've been touched by something that's not right. It's done things to your energy, to your your mental state, to every
Like a
part of you. That's the
violation.
thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is, and absolutely, and it's a violation to all of your everything. To everything that you are, and there's no way to get away from that. There's you can't just go off to a happy place, because what if you go off to a happy place and there's a demon there, because it
Sounds like
happens.
living in a personal hell.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. That's a good way to describe it, because this, you think you're done. You don't want to even think about the one time, but then when it happens again, and it starts to appear, where you live, then my thought was, dear God, I brought this thing home with me.
Everything you say brings back shivers down my spine a little bit to the shadow person experience I had, because we talked about how things were darting around and the energy changed, all that. That was very
Yes.
similar. I went to a spot where at the time I didn't know numerous people had died on these train tracks. And I went to this
Wow.
spot, and that's how I got attached to me was there. And the two people with me were seeing the shadows darting back and forth and appearing up behind me. And they left dragging me out of there running. And it followed me home, just like you said. And it reminds me so much of that. Now, I don't ever feel like I
wanted
got
to say
possessed. But
earlier too, whenever you hear people talk about the scurrying, or in the house when they hear like the 3 knocks and then like something
Yeah.
scurrying around,
Yeah.
you always know
Yes.
it's not good.
yeah, it's not good.
Yep.
Not okay.
Yeah, I've
That
been
we
getting that
we
here a lot.
experienced that. We
no,
experienced at first the knocking. We had something knock on the door, like
3 times?
and then I saw this big, huge, like kind of muddy looking, big round orb about the size of, oh my gosh, I don't know, like a big yoga ball almost.
Oh, wow.
And it floated by my window. Like I sat there and watched it float by the window. It was really muddy looking, just like smoky muddy. It was weird.
Well,
And it just,
we're gonna cut. We gotta cut. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit the wrong button, but we do have to cut to a commercial break. I am so sorry.
that's okay.
When we get back, we'll talk about some of these strange things that happened, and that you had to have an exorcism more than once, and that even after
Yes.
where the show leaves off, the story continues. So we'll be back with our guest Cindy Sauer, the exorcism of Cindy Sauer from A Haunting, if you remember. But we're getting to me more details than we ever would have from that show. So join us after the commercial break, and we'll be opening up the phone lines too. All right, guys, be right back. All right, tonight's guest is Cindy Sauer. If people are just joining us now or listening on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network, Cindy was featured on A Haunting, Season 5, I believe, Episode 9, The Exorcism of Cindy Sauer. We're talking about all the high strangeness that revolved around Cindy in her life, the things you didn't see in the TV show, and the fact that she was possessed. At some point, this thing entered her and made her do things. That, to me, is the scariest thought you could have. We are going to open up the phone lines, but there is only one way to call in tonight because I got Cindy on my phone line. So if you want to call in, it's the video Skype chat. You don't have to be on video. You can turn your video off if you wish to. It's the Skype ID is Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat. That's Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat. Type that whole thing in the search for Skype ID, and you'll find it. Jeff, the engineer, will bring it onto the show, and you can ask Cindy a question about her experience or something you want to share about your own experience, like I did about my shadow person. There's so many similarities to these experiences that we know something's going on. All right, let's go ahead and bring our guest back. You still there with us, Cindy?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. All right, so we were talking about how this started for you, you know, when it really started to get negative, going out to this haunted location. And, you know, I mean, basically, I mean, it seemed like it took you over on its first try.
Yeah, it did. It was quick, and it definitely was a full attack, and I call them attacks for, you know, lack of a better term. But that was my first really negative experience with anything paranormal, and it was straight into, you know, something sinister, something evil taking me over. So, you know, that's when the really weird things started to happen at the house after this happened as well. And that's what I was going to get into, was some of the really odd things that started up. And like I said, I mentioned the knocking at the front door. It was 3 knocks. We started having things happen in threes. I would have religious objects that were destroyed or would fall off the walls. We'd had that happen before, but not to the level that it did after the first attack. We had a lot of external things at first, before I started to really notice something was you know, going on with me. Things would move. We'd have, you know, cabinets open and close, just kind of typical stuff. We would see shadows. That was another thing, is I saw a really massive one, had to be 7 feet tall. It ducked to go underneath a door jamb into a bathroom, and it was in the middle of the day. And I started having trouble sleeping at night, was another thing. We would hear scratching in the walls, and you think, okay, it's an animal.
Right.
But if it was an animal, it was a huge animal, because it wasn't your typical little scurry scratch. This was long, you know, drawn out scratching, like something big. You can tell, you know, the difference. And the tapping, there would be tapping, and it was coming from inside my bedroom walls. We'd even go in the closet to look and see that was, you know, in the bedroom, to see if it was coming from there. And of course, you could never find a source, but you could hear it, and it was really irritating, because it made it really tough to you know, sleep in the room.
Oh, yeah,
And,
you're some scratching. You're wondering what's going to come crawling out on top of you from the wall or something, you know?
It's scary. And then my dreams started to really kick up. I was having pretty bad dreams. A lot of them I didn't remember, but I know, you know, I would wake up from nightmares. You'd wake up and there was something there, and you could feel it. I started to pick up on it during the day more too. So it was at night and during the day. You could just feel something. Everything seemed off. And it was one night when Jason and I were outside. We were kind of stargazing. There was a meteor shower, and I got knocked down. Something came at me again, and it knocked me on the hood of the car.
Wow.
Pretty hard. And that's when I kind of knew, okay, we're dealing with the same thing, because of the way that it felt when it happened. I knew that it was this thing again. And
it's like
that's,
it found you.
you know, yeah, it did. It absolutely did. Or so I thought. I really didn't know that it was something that kind of knew where I was the whole time.
Just
and
looking
it
for an opportunity.
was more than, yeah, it just needed an opportunity, and it definitely got that opportunity. So I took full advantage of it. I still was not, at that point, I still was not thinking, okay, I'm possessed. That still was not on my radar at that point. It was when I was in a car one time with my friend. We drove close to where this house was, but not, you know, it was off of a main highway. Mm-hmm. So it was something you couldn't avoid. And we went down the highway. I got kind of close to the house, and I really was having a tough time internally. I was getting really upset. I started to, you know, just things. I was really irritated. It's also almost like a hypersensitivity to everything. Everything sounds louder. You have this irritation that starts to happen, where everything's just, it's too much. Everything is too loud and too bright, and it's really bothering you. It's making you feel almost psychotic. And I punched myself in the face. Just out of nowhere. And it's like, what, I did it. I wanted to do it again, but I stopped. Like, my hand just did it. And I'm thinking, this is bad. What, you're completely confused. Why would you do that?
Well, Cindy, what I've, these experience, I've, read a lot of stories, people through similar experiences. And what I always think about is when it starts to take over, what you think is you is it. It's not used to being in a body.
Exactly.
So it's like too much light, too much sound, and then it hits itself to see if it can even do that, It's like
that's exactly right. They get in and they have to learn you too. They have to learn, it's like, and it's like wearing a new suit of some kind, or like, like I said, driving a car. You have to learn how it works before you can kind of manipulate it the way that you want it to. And that's what they do as well. They almost like they're breaking you in. And it's very difficult. It comes to a point to where it's really difficult to for you to discern what is you and what's not you. It's almost like you kind of start to intermingle with it. Like it starts to kind of mix in, almost like it has these tendrils that it's just putting out and just sinking into different parts of your being, and just latching on and learning and kind of just integrating. It's a really, it's hard to explain, but it's almost at that level where you start to know it and it starts to know you, and you're never really by yourself, Yeah.
We do have a caller on the line. We have Zach on the Skype Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat line right now. How you doing tonight, Zach?
I'm doing pretty good. Hey, Rob. Hey, Jane. How's everybody going?
Pretty good. You're cutting up a little bit there, but I hear you now. You have a question for our guest tonight?
Yeah, I just have 3 questions. Hey, Cindy, it's very nice to meet you. I do have one question because it looks like you touched up on it a little bit. Because demonic possession, it's always been a topic that I've been a little bit interested in. Whenever you were undergoing these possessions, was it always strictly in the first-person point of view, where you see yourself but you're not entirely in control, or have there been any times where you've seen yourself in a third-person point of view, where you see this entity taking over your body and you see it, I guess you could say, maneuvering it to serve its own agenda?
It was more me seeing it kind of from inside myself, and I can see, I couldn't ever see it in its form, or in its whatever its true form was, but it was more that I felt it, and I heard it, and when I did see it, if this was the same thing, it always appeared physically, as far as me viewing it, always appeared as just a big black shadow, and or that vapor that night. And I say if it was the same one because at that point, I didn't know, but we were kind of dealing with more than just one. So, which again that's not uncommon. But no, I only really saw, as far as the attacks, I just felt completely incapacitated, and I would feel these feelings that it had, these rages, and all this every negative thing that you could ever feel, all at one time, and just I was helpless to do anything. There was just nothing you could do. When it got to a certain point in the attack, I would just completely lose control, and there was nothing. I had to just kind of write it out and pray and hope someone could help. And it's It's I don't know that I would have wanted to see it any other way. That's pretty terrifying to me. If I thought I could actually see it while it was doing this, I don't know. But yeah, that it was mainly from my point of view.
Zach, can you select it down to one more question? You there, Zach?
Yeah, sure. That's no problem. Over on the episode of the haunt. Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, my last question I have is over on the episode of The Haunting, there was a scene there where your daughter claimed that she had a nightmare where she saw your husband before he committed suicide, but this dark entity was next to him. Just in your personal opinion, I think you touched upon it a little bit that it wanted to get to him so it can get to you. But why, in your personal opinion, why do you feel that it targeted him first before it could get to you instead of just going directly to you?
That's a good question.
He always does.
Well, I do believe in God, and for me, that is what that was the answer. I mean, that is the answer. That's my opinion. That's my belief, and the husband is biblically, the husband covers the wife. The husband is the wife's protection, and God is the head. And so there are 2 points of protection for the woman in this family, and the husband is a protection. He's an umbrella over this woman, and if that's gone, then it makes it a whole lot easier. And this is not something that I came to lightly. It's been a tough thing to think about, but I can't say that it's not the truth. I can't say that this isn't what happened. I feel like it may have been what happened. I'm not saying that my husband wasn't in a place where he would have eventually done this, because he had attempted it earlier in his life a couple of times.
Right.
And he had some things that he could never deal with in his life, that it was very sad. He had a lot of issues with things that he just, had never put to bed. So he was troubled. And, but I don't think that it takes much influence if a person is in such despair to push them over that line. And, I think that maybe that it wasn't a cause as much as it was, a piece of a puzzle that was put together that pushed this to happen. And she did have that dream that was real, and it was very, very upsetting for both of us. But she did have the dream, and she saw him, when he was about to do it, and this thing was standing over him.
That's so disturbing.
It is. It's a lot of extremely disturbing things happen that we've had to just come to grips with. On top of suicide, it's just been this whole other thing. And, you don't have a choice but to, kind of settle it with yourself the best that you can.
Well, thank you, Zach, for calling in.
Jason, Cindy, thank you so much for answering my questions. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank
I cannot
you.
wait to
Thank
hear the
you
rest
for
of your
asking.
story. So, everybody, have a good night.
Thanks so
I'll
much.
talk to y'all later.
Have a great night, Zach. And remember, people that call in, it's the Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat is the phone line. Only phone line open tonight to call into the show if you have any questions. But I want to get back, Cindy. You talked about, like he was talking, Zach always says really good questions about what your daughter saw. I know these things can take somebody who is somewhat well-adjusted and make them not. These things
Yes.
kind of prey upon your weaknesses. It's like they know everything about you the moment they
They
latch
do.
on.
And I heard something the other night, the fact that these things are thousands of years old, and if everything is right about them that we think is. And they're smart because they've been around a long time. And if it's a generational thing, I've read up on this. They've known me for a while, and even before I was born, in some people's opinion. So if that's the case, then yeah, it doesn't take much if you're familiar, and especially after you've been attacked, because it's like a beacon at that point.
Right.
And they're not afraid to bring friends. So
yeah, you said, the show really depicts pretty much like one entity trying to attack you, but there were multiple entities going on in your house. I saw some people post in the chat room, and I thought this too when I looked down, the scratching and the sounds of like those noises, the claws and stuff. Sometimes you think of like the hellhound, like especially if it's generational, like the hellhounds come for you kind of deal, and other creatures.
I mean, yes, like goats and dogs and cats and like, yeah. We had animal sounds other than that, like giant animal sounds.
And that's what I mean. When you said that, it makes me think of the hellhound. Kind of like I'm a big fan of Supernatural, the TV show, and you don't ever see them, but you hear the scratches and the growls and the snorts, and
we did. We heard growls. The growls were the creepiest thing, because that's startling to hear these, and they vibrate. They're very they just the frequency is just very disturbing. It's weird. And we heard one night, it sounded like a tiger was clawing around the bed from one side of the bed, in a U, around the bed, the foot of the bed, and back up the other side. You know how cats will kind of sharpen their claws? It sounded like that completely around the bed. And that makes you shoot up out of the bed and run, and you're not going to come back to bed after that.
Right.
I had things hit the walls. It sounded like a giant, it's weird. It's like a giant animal, almost like a bull. I could hear the hoof, the sounds of like hooves hitting the ground. And then it hit my wall with such force that it shook the windows. It was the weirdest thing out of nowhere. It's like in 3 seconds it happened. And it's things like that make no sense. It just doesn't make sense. But we had an experience here at this house a few months ago, my daughter and I did, where it was an animal. And it was in the middle of the day, and we were looking out the back door. The dogs had just come in, and this thing, we don't see it, but we hear it. It comes running at us, and it's hissing, and it's big, and it sounds like a herd of cows. And you could see the grass kind of split where it was coming toward us, and then it just stops right at the house.
That sounds
just
so
completely
much like,
stops.
That sounds so much like, you're familiar with the Bell Witch story?
I am. Yes. Yes, I am. Weird.
When I forgot the name, or John Bell, I think it was John Bell. His name. Him and his son were out in the field. It all started for them was a creature like that in the field, the part of the grass. That's what it sounds like to me. Is a little bit of description of what they first encountered out in the field.
That's funny.
And things started to get really weird for them. Who knows what these creatures are like physically? We think of them in a human perspective.
They're different.
Yeah. Exactly.
They're very different.
Now, for people, they've seen the episode, they see the Exorcism. Let's talk a little bit about that. So, eventually things got so bad, you guys, requested an exorcism through the paranormal team, helped get that for you. What all went down with that?
Well, it was a few months later. It was Halloween night of that year, and it was in 2011. And this was a little over a month. It was, a little under a month actually, since I had been to the house. So this happened in rapid succession. So it's Halloween, and I'm getting the kids ready to go trick or treating, and it's not dark yet. Everything's buzzing in the house. Everything's fine. My youngest, I put her Halloween costume on her, and she ended up in a bathtub full of water in her costumes. I'm like, oh, great. So, I get her out and pick it up, put it in the dryer, and we're waiting for it to get done. So I go to let the water out of the tub, and I reach down and pull the plug. And I sat there for a second because I felt something wrong. And this growl, started deep in my gut, and it just kind of built up and made its way out and just came out of me. and it just was, it was very, it was unpleasant, I guess, because it was an animal sound and it was coming out of me. And at that point, I knew something was about to happen, because I had learned that when things like that happen, that it was only going to get worse. So I go and close my bedroom door, and I called Jason on the phone, because he did not live with us at that point. So he was all the way in Alabama. And, I told him that something was happening. I managed to get him on the phone before things got really bad. I went into my bathroom because I didn't know what else to do, and I just kind of stood at the sink in front of the mirror, and I just sat and watched this happen to my body, and I watched everything contort, and my face was not right. It changed almost, and everything was disjointed. My feet, I remember that my feet almost turned completely inward.
Ooh.
My hands would just go into this claw shape. There was, I couldn't do anything. All I could do was just watch. And it got to the point to where I couldn't speak. My mouth would just twist, and my tongue was stiff. You lose the ability to speak. At least I did. And I just had to wait until it was over. And Jason prayed. So after that, that's when I knew that I needed to do something. It was something that was bad, and I couldn't handle it. So I called. I did some research and found a team that I thought was reputable. And I called them, and they were out within 2 weeks. So that's when we knew we needed help.
And with all the evidence that they gathered while they were at your house, I'm sure this is what they used to convince that would know. Was it directly the Catholic Church, or who did the?
It was actually he's an Orthodox priest.
Orthodox.
And and they I'm not sure what happened on their end, but they have the paranormal group. There was a woman named Michelle, and after they came out and did their preliminary, which was pretty bad, and this is a seasoned paranormal team, and it's something that they'd never seen before.
What kind of stuff happened when they were doing the investigation?
I had a full-on attack. We were only a few minutes into. They decided to do an EVP session with me there before I left that night, and then they were just going to investigate.
Right.
There were 3 people. It was Cheryl, Dan, and Michelle, and they brought in their equipment and set it up, and I was just extremely, nervous. I mean, I'd never met these people. Here they were in my house, and I felt half crazy, like something. I'm just kind of faking this, maybe, or something. Right. You think you kind of think that maybe there's some part of you that's doing this. You want to think
psychological, scientific reason.
Yeah. Yeah, and you try to kind of insert some logic in the whole situation, and just, the last thing you want to do is invite people in your house when stuff's going on that you've never met. And so a few minutes into the EVP session, they shut the lights off, and this thing dropped down on the right side of the room, and it always used to drop down. That's the best thing I could. It's almost like a sonic boom.
Like it was hanging from the ceiling and then drop down, or something.
Well, yeah, there was this noise. There was this noise, and it was it would be like an explosion, sort of, and it would kind of shake the house. And that's when, I could feel it. I could, I knew where it was. Like at that point, it was so, kind of entwined with me that I knew where it was. And when you're possessed, it's not like these things are like always constantly inside of you.
Right.
They come and go, or it will come and go, and it won't be fully controlling you at all times, but it's always there influencing thoughts and emotions and words and actions in some way, but not fully possessing all the time. But this thing dropped down kind of, I don't know if it's in if it's a vortex or what, I don't know what it is, but it would kind of dropped from the ceiling to the floor. And then it started to make its way around the room, and they could feel it. You could tell they felt it because everybody started to kind of get uncomfortable and look around. And they were recording it, doing a video because they needed evidence. And it came around to my left side, and the investigator asked, "Do you know that this is not your house? This is Cindy's house?" And when that happened, that's when it pounced on me. And that's when I suffered a full-on attack. Right there in front of everybody in the camera. So I think that after that happened, I'm not sure how long it lasted. It's fuzzy. Mm-hmm. But after that happened and everything kind of got calmed down, they kept their cool. These people, it's amazing that they did, but they did. And Michelle gave me a glass of water and sat me down, and she said, I have a friend that I'm going to call, a priest, and I'm going to have him come out and talk to you. And I don't even know that the word exorcism even came up.
Well, as an investigator, I wouldn't even bring it up to you yet. I'd be like, we're going to talk to a priest. I wouldn't even mention the word exorcism.
People don't realize that you have to hide things from them. I was limited on the information that I got.
Because they're fighting what's inside of you. Exactly.
So I didn't get everything. I didn't know everything, time of arrival, things like that. They didn't tell me. I knew the day, but it was only a few weeks after that happened that they were ready for Father Deering to come and talk to me. And I wasn't, I knew what talking to me meant. Mm-hmm. It knew what it meant. That day, I tried to kind of, not think about it. And as time kind of went on, I got a little more aggravated and upset and nervous. And, there were some points where I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't think I can. And so Jason, someone had pulled up into the yard. So Jason went outside. He said it was just a paranormal team. Right. But I knew better. I knew exactly who it was, and I knew that the priest was there. And he went outside. When he did, I started to, my body, I started to lose control. And this thing was really, really pressing hard. And it wanted me to go and get a knife and cut myself open, to cut open my thigh. And it wanted, things, it kept trying to tell me to do things like that. And I kept just telling it to please stop. You come to a point to where you really bargain with it. Just, if it will just stop, then, there were times when I would say, if you just leave everything alone now, don't mess with anybody, then later, if you want to attack me, you can. And just would bargain, because that's the only way I knew how to even start to deal with it. But they were all outside. I think they wanted everyone there before to set up a camera or whatever they were doing. But by the time they got back in, all hell had broken loose. Evidently, I threw things. And it's fuzzy on what I remember. I can tell you what I know, but there are things that I've learned that happened that I didn't know. So to me, I was awake through the whole thing, even though I was not in control. I remember some things that happened, but evidently there were blackouts in between.
And that's how I think it tricks you. You don't know you're doing certain things because it just blacks it from your memory for you to to stop yourself even from it's a fight of wills.
Very much, and it's very internal. As much as there's an external thing going on, internally it's really, really a fight. It's something that, and you're already so weak. So fighting is so hard that it's either fight or don't, and you just don't have that. A person doesn't have it in them to not fight, or at least I didn't. I imagine some people do, which is horrible. But
well, you wonder when people we've talked about this on the show, and I know it's a touchy subject, but people that do crazy things, a lot of times afterwards say, "I don't remember what I did," or there's
Yeah.
hazy memory. I've always wondered, because the when people talk about possession, a lot of times they talk about these blackout periods. You wonder if there's
And
some relation.
you do. And see, I sit and think now, are there times that I did and don't remember? I don't know. Like, I honestly don't, I don't know. So that's tough too, is thinking about that, and also reconciling yourself to the fact that it isn't your fault, and that you did not do these things. Some things that were done, you did not do. And it's hard to not feel guilty or feel like it's your fault, for these people who had to go through this. And some of them had experiences of their own
Feel that too.
with this thing, apart from being around me, which,
I was just saying,
yeah,
when they did the exorcism, you went through this, everything becomes fuzzy. At some point, though, you felt like they portrayed in the TV show, you felt that it did leave you, like it was successful.
yeah, I did come to that point, and it took a while. It took a little bit longer than what was on the show, and there was a lot more that went on. And I was not a very nice person when the priest first walked in. I'll tell you that. I was all over the place, and trying to get to him, like get at him, I guess. But there came a point where they sat me in a chair, and there were people there. I didn't know them. I don't know how many people were there. I didn't know, but there were some men holding me down. I remember that. And there were a lot of prayers, a lot of people praying. And there were points when I was really tired and I didn't think I could keep going, but I did. I didn't have a choice but to keep going. And you're just exhausted. Your body hurts. There came one point where we thought, okay, I guess everybody thought, not me, but everybody thought, okay, it's gone. And it was not.
So you
they
felt
do a lot
it
of.
wasn't gone.
I knew it wasn't, but it kept trying to pretend like it was. And there are these points where they draw back, and they just, it's almost like when a goat is attacking you, they'll draw back and come at you again. And it's kind of that same concept. And we went right back into it, and it was worse. And I think that's the point when it gave him a name. And to my recollection, I don't think it was very long after that when, and this is between me ending up on the floor. Mm-hmm. And there was a point where there was nothing touching, but I remember my head and my toes, like the tip of my head. And I'm not, I remember that. I remember.
You were floating?
Just
levitating?
Everything but my toes, the tips of my toes were touching the ground and the tip of my head. And I don't know what was happening, but I know that did happen.
Wow.
And, I moved things. I was kicking and they had to hold me down, but there was a point where, and I can't recall exactly that moment. But things were fuzzy, but there was a point where everything got still. And I was tired, and I know that I could only lay there for a few, where I finally came around, and it was just me, and I felt like I was by myself. So, they proceeded to go around the house and, cleanse the house with holy water and say prayers, and we all went out to my husband's old garage, the big old shop, and we said prayers there inside the garage. And Father Deard and I sat and spoke after that for a while, and then it was done. And they all left tired and probably bewildered. And I was just kind of in this state of elation because I felt, so positive, and it was the first time in such a long time that I did. It just felt amazing. It was this, everything in the house was warm and bright, and it almost had like a smell, like this amazing smell to it, and it felt so peaceful. And it just, I thought, okay, this is done.
Was it
This
the
is
smell of
over,
roses?
and that's it.
Was it the smell of roses? Because that's a lot of times
Yes,
described.
yes. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was.
It's usually what's described after a house has been cleansed or after an exorcism, after something that negative has been pushed
Yeah.
away. It's like the void is filled with the smell of roses.
It was amazing. And that's something that I wish I could. You want to keep it with you forever. You want to just be in that moment forever. But that moment went. And, after that, I took my husband's ashes and put them to rest where they were supposed to be. And Christmas came and went, and I decided to sell the house because things were just still not right. They weren't right, and I knew it. And I could feel things, and I just didn't like it. So that was time to move on. And that's what we prepared to do, was move on.
So then you moved into a new home, but things didn't totally end like they show in the show.
They didn't.
So
No,
what's
they did
been
not.
happening since that point? So everybody saw the end of that episode and like, oh, happy ending, blah, 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 and things are still happening. So tell us a little bit. We got about 7 minutes left of showtime, so I know there's a
Okay.
lot, but, briefly give us a description of what's been going on.
I can do that. I can definitely do that. It was, I moved into the house in late winter. It was kind of early spring. And it's still kind of cool here, but we moved into the new house and we were renting it. And it was late that spring, and I was sitting on my, new back deck on my new patio furniture, and I was talking to my friend on the phone, and just felt good. Things were, it was a different place, and I was hopeful. And out of nowhere, this thing just hits me like a ton of bricks, and it takes me over.
Oh, wow.
And broad day, it right there in the most perfect,
You were
peaceful
happy.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it started happening again, which is the absolute worst thing that you can,
Right.
That's not what you want. And the funny thing is, though, even though that happened, I still thought, okay, this is isolated. As crazy as it sounds,
No, it
you
doesn't.
don't want it to happen again.
Yeah, it's just you don't want to accept that this is still happening.
Absolute denial. Absolute denial. After you've gone through so much and you think, okay, we're done. But it went forward and things progressed to the point to where almost exactly the same time that next year, I had to call on Father Darren again. So
So it
That's
was another exorcism
led
just like
in-
the first one?
yes, and another exorcism right before our show aired on A Haunting. Actually, it was right before. He had to come out and we had to do another exorcism.
And do you feel like that one was more successful than the previous one?
I feel like it helped. I feel like it definitely helped, and there was a lot of ground that we covered and a lot of things that we did that were important and did lead us to a lot of answers. So it definitely did help.
So, but even if it did help, I get the feeling that it's still a battle. You're still fighting it.
Yeah, I am.
And with a generational demonic haunting, that these things are, from everything, listening to other people who have experienced this, I'm not an expert at all. But reading and listening to Malachi Martin interviews, it sounds like it's one of those things that's almost impossible to totally detach from you because it's like it's in your blood, it's in your family.
Exactly. And that's the part that we're trying to kind of, figure out. As far as the boy thing, I think that I have stopped it from going any further. Actually, I gave birth to a little boy in 2014. One of my daughters had a little boy the next year, and my other daughter had a little boy last year. So that's 3 in a row. And
So maybe you broke
everything's,
some kind of,
we're,
well, maybe you did. Maybe you
it's-
broke some kind of tie to it.
yeah. I think that we did break a cycle. And that's for them, which is amazing. you know, if that's what I get out of this, hey, that's good. That's more than good. That's wonderful. That's a miracle. So, you know, I think that at this point, when they know you, that it's going to be an ongoing battle, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
What do you do now to, besides having the exorcism, what do you do now to kind of protect yourself?
Well, I try anything within my kind of scope of belief. I don't do crazy things,
Right.
but I do stage because I do have a little bit of Native American, history. I wear a rosary, actually. I try to wear a rosary. I'm doing good with the one I've got on right now. I've gone through a lot of rosaries. I'm not, of course, I'm not Catholic. I grew up Methodist, but I use that. I've got that. And they break a lot, but I keep putting them back on. So I do that. And I really say the prayer of St. Michael, the Archangel, a lot. That's been a huge help. So
Yeah,
those are some of the things that I do.
That seems to be very powerful things for people in these situations. Myself, I'm agnostic. I question everything. And, but even when I went through my experience, I called out. I mean, I'm not an atheist. I believe in a God. But
Yeah.
I called out to God when I had my experience of being levitated up in the air by this thing after 4 months of it tormenting me. There's something. There is a higher power that can protect us. I do believe that.
I do too. And I think we tend to kind of put God in this little box. And, that's why I'm hesitant to say, I'm necessarily a Christian, because there are things that I believe now that I didn't believe before, and there are good things and bad things. There are angels, there are demons, but what they are is, we don't fully understand that. So, I kind of go with that. I don't have sort of a staunch belief on it.
Well, Cindy, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. We could have talked a lot longer on this subject. Sorry we didn't get you up on video.
That's okay. That's
I really
all
wish
right.
you could have. But thank you so much for coming on. And for people, you're going to be coming out with, you're working on a book. You have any time frame for that at all? Or?
Yeah. The book is titled The Possession of Cindy Sauer. I didn't want to stray too far from, what was going on. And as much as it tells a little bit of what happened in the book, it starts from the beginning, like my youngest experience, and goes throughout my life, actually. And it's a viewpoint that, like I said before, that I don't think a lot of people have ever heard about. So, I hope that in doing this, that if I can't, help someone else, that I at least can collect some sort of, something that will help or give some insight as to what happens when all this goes on.
Yeah.
But the full story is in the book, and I'm very close to done, and we're going to start submitting manuscripts to publishers very soon.
Well, I'll keep my eye open for when you post for the book, and make sure I share it on my page and all that so people can see and have a chance to purchase it. Thank you again so much for coming on the show, Cindy. It's an amazing story, and the reason you share it is for other people to know that might be going through this, that they're not crazy. Because I know when I went through my experience, I thought I was losing my mind, and I know you probably felt that way at the same time too. So that's the biggest way you can help people, just by putting your story out there. Let them know
exactly.
They're not alone. This has happened, and there's a way out. You can fight it, because that's where they try to win. They try to make you think you can't fight it. Exactly. Yeah, and we're here to help people. That's what we're working on. So. And thank you so much for having me on the show. And thank you, Cindy. And, when your book comes out, if you want to come back on, talk more about it. I think there's a lot more still to the story we could talk about, so I definitely would have you back on to talk about the book. I'd love to. All right, guys. Next Sunday, Paranormal Soup will be back 10 p.m. to midnight Central Time, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern, same bat time, same bat channel. We're going to have Bruce McCabe on, very highly reputable ufologist. I think Deborah Merritt, I think, is the one that got me this guest, but I don't know if she was also the one that talked me into contacting him as well. But if you have guest suggestions for the show, you can always find me on Facebook, or you can email me at oojblandoo@yahoo.com and give me your guest suggestions. Like tonight, I think this was Deborah Merritt that helped me get Cindy on. Thank you, Deborah. And Bruce McCabe, I think that was her. Whoever did help me get him, thank you. So hopefully we'll have him on next week. We'll talk about UFOs, aliens. He's a solid researcher, and I can't wait to talk about, are there aliens out there right now with us? All right, guys, see you next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a great night. Forgot to mention, guys, too, coming up after the show, I think Rob's going to have a Paranormal Soup after party like he did last week. So go to Old City Vapors on YouTube and check out Rob Autry. Bill Perry will probably be there, too, I'm guessing, doing some spirit boxing, I'm sure. All right, guys, see you next week.